All right, everybody, we are going to get started today with a video on gender, sexuality, and language. So today I already posted in the description the topic as well as the article that we're going to be following. So I've had a number of people send this article to me asking my thoughts on it. And so I thought it would just be more useful or more interesting, more engaging, more worthwhile to open that up as a live space so others can ask questions, so that others can come here and engage with their thoughts in a way that's like less one-sided. So today I'm going to, hey Autumn. So today I'm going to go ahead and start by describing myself a little bit, talk about my experience just very briefly, and then extremely quickly just jump into the article, which I have not read. I've not read the article because I want to express my most honest feelings in the moment and how I'm working through it, and also have it be a little bit more engaging. So I haven't read that. Let me take a drink because my mouth is dry. I'm so excited you're here. I hope you can watch most of it or a lot of it. Also, right now I'm wearing my Toronto Pig Safe shirt. I am so excited about this shirt. Look how cute this pig is. I've had the pleasure of meeting a number of pigs in the past, I would say 4 months. And yesterday we went and had a vigil space, and I got to meet tons of activists from Toronto Pig Save, and also just tons of others who came from like Georgia, who came from South Carolina, from Virginia. So they were also giving out these shirts, and I'm so excited. I love this shirt. I'm going to show it one more time because I'm so excited. So I'm going to be wearing this all the time, all the time. I had some other shirts. I've misplaced them. I don't know where they got to. As far as like non-human animal justice shirts. Anyway, let me have a drink like I said I was going to. When they start, I feel like I have to like speak so quickly and be super engaging, but we'll process as we go. So, just to start off, to tell you a little bit about my experience and the things I identify with, the things I don't identify with. I do identify as queer. The word that I would most use is probably queer. I also identify as agender, non-binary, femme, and I identify as gender non-conforming. I do identify as trans, though that's more complicated, I feel, for me. It's something that I've had to look at a lot more. And there are ways I do identify as trans, and there are ways that I don't identify as trans. But the first four like words like queer, agender, non-binary, femme, non-conforming, gender non-conforming, these are all words that I do deeply identify with. So you're welcome to use those words to describe my experience when talking about me or talking about this space. And I use they, them pronouns. So when referring to me, you can describe me as, you know, there's Amani there. They did a segment today talking about gender and sexuality and language and that relationship, and shared some of their experiences. So that's a way that you can use it. I do not use gendered pronouns pretty much ever to describe myself. It's extremely infrequent and very specific. So if you're curious about that, you can ask me personally about that. But in general, they, them pronouns will work just fine, and no other pronouns will work. So get on that. So welcome everybody. These are some lovely names to see here. So yeah, just to describe my own experience, I do identify with queer. I do not at all identify with LGBT. And some of you may think, oh, aren't they the same thing? But for me, they mark even if they point to this, this is an interesting thing to know about language. There is no one way to communicate a concept, not just one. There's hundreds of ways in any language to arrive at the same thought. And each way that you arrive at that thought will, like the path that you use, the language you use, the history that you use will tell you a little bit about what other ideologies you're linking to it. When I hear the term LGBT, I tend to pull in a history that is very white centering, that is very masculine centering, that is still very heteronormative and capitalist. So that is not a term that I identify with. Even if you add the QIA, you add the more nuanced understandings of people's identities and experiences. It's not a term that I identify with. I identify deeply as queer, which I understand as a process of deconstructing. So identifying as queer is less of like a being and more like a doing for me. So just to give you that background. And again, if you have, who sent a wow? Oh, Danila. Welcome. Yeah, if you have thoughts that you'd like me to speak on, this is a space to ask some problematic questions and things that you could Google. I will permit a few of those in this space, then I'll answer them as fully as I can. If you just want to hear my thoughts on something, I will be prioritizing, however, questions that I feel are deeper and move this conversation forward more actively in a more compelling way. So I'm going to hold space for both of those. I will also probably stop the recording at 1 hour and start it again immediately. I'm planning to do more than an hour, but I'm thinking Facebook has had some problems with my videos. I don't know what they are, but my videos have disappeared. I currently have not been able to locate them, but I'm thinking it may be a file size issue unless someone is reporting my content, and I'm not really sure why anyone would do that. So yeah, so I'm going to stop this at an hour and I'm going to start right back up. So please don't head out at that point. And I'll let you know again at that point. Okay, so if you're following along, I suggest that you pull this article up with me. And I've already, I'm going to see if I can just paste it again. This is the article I am responding to. So I strongly suggest that you click on this article now and read along with me because I'm going to be processing as I go. So I'm not going to read every word because that wouldn't be very interesting. Maybe it would, I don't know. Maybe you want to know about my reading proficiency or what I stop on the vocabulary. But I'm going to read through it and I'm going to focus on each of the points. So I'm not going to read every piece of the language, but I'm going to focus on the points that I see. So, yeah, if you have questions, go ahead and post them below, even if they're like, oh, this is going to sound silly or I don't know what I'm talking about. Go ahead and post them below, and we will get to them as it seems appropriate. Sound good? Then let's go ahead and get started. So the article is titled 12 LGBTQ terms straight people need to stop using. Okay, so that's interesting. I also do not know much about GoMag as a brand. I see that they describe themselves as the cultural roadmap for city girls everywhere. And I'm not sure what I make of that. It tells me a little bit about what I can expect here. So let's see. So I am going to read like main bolded things. So it says, whenever our identities become on trend, y'all hop on the bandwagon. Then there's a picture described as two women holding hands. They seem to be of different colors, different skin tones here. No other apparent features that I can see, that I can perceive. Hey, welcome, welcome. Please tell me that you're going to join and cause a lot of trouble because I'm super ready to get into this conversation. I'm super ready to deconstruct this. And I'm really hoping I do not know what Facebook has done with my videos. I have no idea. They're just gone. I haven't even received notification that they were reported. So I'm really not sure if someone found the language problematic, if they found that I was sharing hate speech, I don't know. Or maybe it was, right? I don't know if it was because I had a little bit of music playing in the background. I've received no notification, but I'm hoping that this will conform more to the standards and will not be deleted. If it does get deleted, I'm going to post just as like, I'm going to post segmented videos on the Intuit Hue page. So either way, you're going to get this content. You're going to get it. And yeah, so let's keep doing this. So we just read the title, 12 LGBTQ terms straight people need to stop using. Okay. And please read along with me. If you have access to this, please read along with me. Okay. Okay, so in the introduction to the article, it seems, welcome Moritz. In the introduction to the article, it seems to be talking about problematizing how straight cisgender folks have been largely absent from a lot of this work and how it's been historically been done by a lot of other people. But now that it seems to be like more popular or in some ways more accepted, it's not accepted. I can't stand hearing people say that. But now that it's become more on trend, seeing some people co-opt language and different terms. And if you know me, you know I never want to shut up about language. It's my fave thing. I love language. I love deconstructing language. I love talking about how we can re-understand our narratives and use storytelling to construct our identities. This is what I do. This is what I love. This is what I'm passionate about. So I'm pretty excited. And I've not read this, as I mentioned, I've not read this. So number one is andro or androgynous. 9 viewers. This is a this is definitely a record. So androgynous. It says androgynous people are people who play with their gender expression through fashion. Okay. So this first term, they seem to be problematizing it because they write, queer women who identify as androgynous have been settling the standard of style for decades with slick backed hair, dapper suits, and the rocking of a dark red lip. My first feeling, just my feeling, I don't know, we're gonna see because I'm gonna keep looking at this and deconstruct it. My feeling though is that this is someone with a rather limited, I'm just gonna scroll down to the bottom because I wanna know who's talking. It doesn't tell me, cool. I feel like this is someone with a probably somewhat standard femme experience, or at least a limited understanding of femme experience, because they're using a lot of language here that feels really imprecise. Like I'm not exactly sure who they're like including in specific terms that they're talking about, and a lot of it seems to be referring to just women. I don't see that being particularly inclusive of trans women. I don't see that being reclaimed here. Maybe I'll be surprised, and that would be quite exceptional. I would love that. So I don't have thoughts on androgynous, andro. I feel like this one has been in, I mean, I'm 24, but in all of my experience, I've heard this term pretty standardly, so I don't think that that supports that it hasn't been appropriated, just because I think it's standard. I think the things that we think are most standard, the things that are least marked, are usually the most problematic things. So I'm actually not going to speak on this further. I don't see anything immediately. If you see something, please write it down below. Share your thoughts with me. I'm not exactly sure what to do with that one, but I'm going to continue. If I see something later, I'll come back to it. So number 2 is boy. Okay. So it says within the LGBTQ community, that's a problem. There's not a community. I see what they're trying to do. This rhetoric is extremely dangerous. There is not one community. People say the same thing, the Black community. I don't see, I think people who understand marginalized experience understand the complexities of how much confusion and how much difference there is, how much nuance there is within any given community. So when I see language like the blank community, it does concern me because that's not the reality I see, and I'm very concerned that there's some like appropriative tactics of like grouping everything together to seem like, I don't know, I don't like, it feels like a progressive liberal tactic to be like the blank community but in fact, like I don't use that language. I would say queer spaces and communities. I don't know. Minimally, you need to acknowledge that form of difference. I'm going to be as pedantic as I feel is necessary because that's exactly what we're doing here, looking at language. But please, if you disagree with something, or you think you disagree with something, or you're not understanding something, or you're like, I really feel that you're missing a point, please share that with me. You can put it in the chat. I also have my phone here. So if someone wants to write me anything in private as a question or a concern or anything, you're welcome to do that too. Okay, so boy, it says within the LGBTQ community, boy is an identity for gay men, queer women, genderqueer people, studs, and the list goes on. It's used as a subversive way of identifying with boyish masculinity while still standing outside of gender norms. It's not yours to use in a cute way to describe your boyfriend. Yeah. So is this article for white cis hetero identified femme folks? Like, is that who this is for? But women in particular, I guess women, maybe not even femme folks. Is this for people who are really not? This is not for me? Is it? I guess is what I'm asking. I don't know. What do you all perceive? Who is this for? Who is this article for? From what you're understanding, if you've read it already, if you're reading it just now, who does it seem like it's for? Because I don't feel like it's like. So I mean for in two senses. Like obviously it says it's for terms straight people need to stop using. So ideally, it's going to straight people to help them rework their language. But also, is it for me? Because I do not feel, I don't know, I don't know how to describe this feeling, so I'm just going to keep going. And as it becomes clear, I'll share it. Okay, 3, coming out. The process of coming out is filled with anticipation, anxiety, and fear for I'm going to read this one. For so many LGBTQ people, there's a long history of being shunned from our families, losing our jobs, our friends, or even our housing over coming out. So when you tell us that you're struggling to come out as a poetry major to your parents, or your ex-boyfriend outed himself as an asshole when he cheated on you, what you're really doing is erasing the very real experience. You can't possibly understand the nuance behind coming out because you never had to question your sexual or gender identity as outside the cultural norms. So please don't use this term with such flippancy about things that are not actually coming out. Yeah, that feels like it makes sense. I do hear people saying that a lot, and I do question in what ways it's cheapening, to use a capitalist term, cheapening the experience of what it means to go through that process. Like everything could be coming out now, you know, and does it really just mean I'm sharing something that was secret, like, or is it sharing something that is secret, but also like has deconstructed yourself to the point that you experience self-hate and also is structurally empowered so that you feel like there's no mobility in your communities? Is that what coming out is? In that case, I think yeah, we do need to reclaim some of that space. Women, I guess, cis women and straight. Yeah, it feels like it's being written for them in both senses of the word, like to them, towards them, directed at them, and also with some of their ideologies. I don't feel that this is the most deconstructive thing I've read, but again, I want to just work through it and see. I don't want to. I don't want to miss anything. So yeah, coming out, I definitely see that. People use that very casually and do not understand the political implications of what it means to experience coming out. Also, that coming out is something that happens in stages that I hear people saying, like, I don't know, like you have to come out to yourself first. And I would ask a lot of you the same question, like, do you come out with your truth? Or you come out with the fact that, I don't know, like we all, it's layered is what I'm saying. I'm not going to get caught up in that, but it's layered. And coming out, you have to come out with yourself first. Then you may have the experience of coming out with your biological family, coming out with your social groups, coming out with larger social groups. If you're in a university space, you know, does that mean that you're speaking up whenever something problematic is said in class, or are you like, you know, like a lot of people are come out, but they actually are still quiet in a lot of ways, which I see as justified and unjustified. It's complex, is my point. So, yeah, I think it makes sense to say, you know, stop using this in such a reductive way when you don't understand the fullness of the experience of how. Yeah, I think I've said what I've said, so I'm going to stop on that one. Hafi, have you read this one already? You've already read this article? I saw that you wrote a little bit. I was trying not to read anyone's commentary on it because I just wanted to process my immediate thoughts. But okay, 4, Dyke. Also, if someone is watching this and is thinking of recording it, please understand that I'm using this in an educated, not educated, but educational context. I'm not using this language as hateful, as derogatory, as violent. What we're understanding is this is a space of learning and deconstructing. So I hope that everyone engaging understands that. And yeah, I don't know if my videos have been reported, but they're gone, is my point. And I don't know why. We discussed a few good things about it. You and Lilia, or just people on the posts. Hopefully this stays up and then I can have a further conversation on some of these things. So let's see. Okay, so we're talking about the word dyke in a very deconstructive way. My first thought is, are people actually saying this? Are like cis hetero-identified women saying this? Because if they are, then it's absurd. And I'm really surprised, but not surprised, that a conversation needs to happen around this. That just needs to stop. That's not chill. This word is literally not from cis hetero white women's work, so it's not yours to. You don't understand. This is the thing. People talk about cultural appropriation all the time, and I see them get caught up on the definition. Is this cultural appropriation? Is it not? As if that's the only understanding of the question. But it's really not the most useful thing, because anyone can define it, anyone can bring in the factors that do make it part of that definition or not. Why are we not asking the question of, what does it do? What does it do for cis hetero-identified white women or white femmes to be using the term dyke if they don't identify and further the work and share the work that has already been done? It's the same thing as Miley Cyrus now. Miley Cyrus to me is one of the greatest thieves, just stealing all kinds of stuff from Black cultures and other places. Notice I said Black cultures. It's not Black culture. We don't have a unified culture. We don't have a unified African American culture and Africa. Like, these words are complex, and we should be using them in nuanced ways. But anyway, yeah, I do believe, because this person wrote, that this is happening, and it's not in my experience. I'm believing that what they're saying is that this actually happens, and it's absurd. If you're using this language and you do not identify deeply with the work that went into it, and if others are checking you constantly for using this language because they do not see your alliance to that work, and I don't mean allyship, I mean the bond of having experienced that and having to navigate that space and rework it for yourself to create meaning. If you don't have that bond, maybe just stop using it. It's quite simple. Don't use it. If you hear other people using it, tell them to stop. I feel like people get so frustrated sometimes with, like, they're like, I can't just tell someone what to say. We have freedom of speech. Yeah, but also, no, we don't actually. I don't have the freedom of speech in my body, and I don't pretend that I have freedom of speech. What I have is open speech that will be constantly policed, and which could at any point end my physical life or cause complications to my thriving. I don't live with freedom of speech, and I don't think that's a super accurate way to talk about it, which is not accurate. So yeah, if you hear people using things that you feel are really deconstructive and violent without it being purposeful, yeah, maybe check them on that. Number 5, I'm not going to read this one because I feel like this term in particular, this may just be because I have a male privileged experience, but this feels particularly like something that could be extremely triggering for anyone watching who... Christopher, welcome. I'm not going to share number 5 because I feel like even just reading this, and especially hearing it, could be very violent and traumatizing. But if you're reading the article, I posted in the description, you can look it up too. It's just, there's a link there. So it says, this word is very controversial even within the LGBTQ community. Again, there are spaces where it's not controversial. There are communities where it is not. There are LGBTQ communities where it is not controversial. It's a problem. That's the thing. It's nuanced, and yeah, we need to stop with this idea that it's one great community. It's not. It's just not fact. The term was used as a derogatory word against gay men for decades and has a painful history for many of our LGBTQ elders. Yeah, that's the same. If that's not your experience, like, stop. If that's not your experience, don't use it. I think generally we should be working with that and practicing that. Don't speak outside your experience. Conjecture outside of your experience, because we need to understand that we exist in complex ways and that there are experiences that are beyond us. So feel free to conjecture, but also name that that's your conjecturing. This is not a space to conjecture that you especially relate to some of these words like 4 or 5. If you don't relate to that experience, think about what that's doing. How beautiful is it for you to just be able to walk in and out of someone's privilege, to walk in and out of someone's experience and just put these words on whenever you want to, play with them, have fun with them, do things with them. While many of us are not able to walk out of or to move ourselves, how can I use less problematic language? A lot of us are not able to have that language not applied to our bodies. And I do think it's really, how can I use this without particularly cursing? I think it is an extremely poor choice, and I think it's extremely reflective of those who choose to selectively identify with an experience and profit from it. Yeah, it's not yours. I don't know how much more. It's not really that complicated. It's just not yours. I'm gonna move on. 6. This is interesting. This is interesting. So 6 is femme. I'm gonna read all of this one because this is a word I look at a lot in my own work, and something I identify with a lot, and something that I see could have a lot of potential problems. So I'm gonna pause for just a second and check in with everybody. Does anyone have questions that they want to post in the group here? I'd be happy to answer them right now if there's thoughts so far. If there's points that you feel like are not being brought up, please share them here. And also, can someone confirm that the live is up? Someone just reported that it had gone down. Am I still audible here? And video showing? So if somebody can confirm that for me, I would appreciate it greatly. So it's still up? Okay, thank you so much, thank you. If something was missed, please tell me. And I don't know how you tell me what was missed, but if you tell me what I was talking about, I can reaffirm some of those things. So number 6, and again, write your questions, write your thoughts below. Feel free to message them to me privately. I won't read your name if you message it to me privately. So femme. Lately, you can walk into any fast fashion store, Urban Outfitters, H&M, Forever 21, Topshop, etc. Okay, so if you're noting these places, it's probably with something problematic. These places are known, as many places are. The ones that I recognize here are notably poor at working with their workers' rights and different working conditions. They seem to really not care, and they seem to not really, some of them really are also known for their work of stealing designs from indigenous communities and other communities of color. So if you're included in this little list of stores, you're probably not doing too hot anyway. I'm glad it's up. Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, so lately you can walk into any fast fashion store and see a graphic t-shirt that says something along the lines of Femme Forever. This is a thing. And let me be clear, this is co-opting a queer gender identity. The femme identity has long been a part of the lesbian community with the butch-femme dichotomy. It's also a queer gender identity, meaning queers who don't identify as women can be femme. That's really important. That's really important. And I fear that sometimes when I'm using femme as a word to describe myself or others, particularly with others, people don't seem willing to believe me if I put it on my own body. But when I apply it to people who are perceived as women, I'm concerned that something is being lost in the queerness of that. So that is a concern that I already have. I'm not sure exactly how I want to approach dealing with that, or if that's my question to deal with. Feels like it is. Yeah, I deeply identify as femme myself. Let's see. As a self-identified femme, when I see straight cisgender women use the word femme to identify themselves or their group of friends, it really gets me going. This is an example of y'all seeing a trend and just hopping on without understanding any context. You take our style, our culture. Honestly, this feels like it's about white gay men. Like, as I'm reading this. I don't know of cis hetero women who are doing this. I believe it. I'm not arguing that it's not the case, but this also could be absolutely applied to self-identified gay men, for sure, white gay men. Hey, David. I'm glad you're watching. I don't know if you're still watching. I just saw that. Yeah. I think that's one thing I'm struggling with this article is knowing, like, there's so many complex ways in which each Like there are tons of people who identify as marginalized groups, like white gay men, for example, who are very willing to actively erase or just not undo the fact that they're passively erasing years and years of others' experiences, to speak over others' experiences, to touch others' bodies in a very colonizing and possessive way. These are things that I've experienced over and over and over and over. And so honestly, I feel like this article could be really useful in responding to some people who identify as LGBTQ. I don't know. I'm trying to be very deconstructive in every single word that I say. But yeah, I would include them in this category of people who need to be reflecting on these things in particular. Okay, so as a self-identified femme, when I see straight cisgender women use the word femme to identify themselves or their group of friends, it really gets me going. Oh yeah, sorry, I read this. I'm going to reread it. This is an example of y'all seeing a trend and just hopping on without understanding any context. You take our style, our culture, and our history when you co-opt our identities to try on for a moment. This is what I was just talking about. Because you can literally just try it on and have fun with it. Just put it on as a costume, and then when you're tired, you take it off, right? And you move back into your privilege. You actually never moved out of your privilege. It's the actual most accurate statement. You have no understanding of the nuance behind identifying as femme in the queer community. Femme is a gender identity and is not something to wear on your t-shirt or talk about with ease as you're out for brunch. Yeah, I actually see femme as I see queer, and I see it as a process rather than a more of an adjective. Like it is an adjective, but it's also, for me, it's about the process. So as I see queer as a process of undoing and deconstructing and reclaiming violence and healing through trauma, I also see femme deeply as healing from trauma, healing through trauma, healing through storytelling. I see it as, like, for me, it doesn't even necessarily have anything at all to do with traditional understandings of femininity. Sometimes I use it in that, but really what I'm referring to is a deeper process of of healing, of mending, of supporting and nourishing, and I don't necessarily relate it to traditional feminine archetypes. Yeah, so again, I just want to clarify for anyone who's watching who may not have heard what I said at first. I am holding space to answer some like Google answerable type questions or things that are potentially really problematic. I will be holding space to respond to some of those things. If you want to hear my particular thoughts not align with my personal experience, then I will not speak on it. If I do, I'll conjecture and I'll note that that is just my observation and that it's limited. But I welcome you to go ahead and comment below, or you can message me privately. I won't read your name unless you ask me to, with thoughts. So don't be afraid to engage. We're all here to learn, and I'm willing to do a little bit of community service in order to get that engagement. But what I'm really here for is trying to move this conversation forward to a deeper place. So let's keep going. So number 7, gender fluid or using they them pronouns. Alrighty, before I even read this, I know I know tons of people. I think I would most identify with this article if it weren't described as just for straight people, because I really see so many different groups committing these violences. My first thought on reading number 7 and seeing gender fluid and using they them pronouns, I hope some of you are reading along with me also. The article link is in the description. Is I just see people throwing it on and being like, one thing that I remember early on, I did this too, because we all learn and do our own work. But I remember hearing someone early on when I was engaging in more queer spaces, though these were mostly LGBTQIA, LGB spaces pretty much. Some people would come in and they'd be like, we'd ask pronouns, because everyone's like, I want to be progressive and ask pronouns. It's not because they legitimately understand what it means to engage someone's gender as a construct and as a set of experiences. But either way, they're asking for pronouns. And when I first started asking questions about my pronouns and my experience and everything, I met a lot of people who were like, it really doesn't matter to me what pronouns you use. And I was like, yeah, wait, that's actually amazing. Like, just to be open to, whatever. I don't like labels. Like, that's the cool thing to do, but it's also extremely violent. And it took me a long time not a long time, it took me some time to realize that I saw people doing the same thing where they would throw on they, them pronouns, or they would throw on, I don't really care, I don't like labels, or I'm fluid, or whatever. It's all, I'm not in the binary, or, it's all a spectrum. Okay, but like, where's your work? Like, actually, if someone misgenders me, you will not correct them. If someone commits a gendered violence on you, you're probably not going to correct them. You may even actually feel flattered by it. You may encourage it. You may encourage it on my body. It's kind of just convenient and cute, I guess, No, literally, you're talking about gender fluid and stuff too, right? Happy says there are days that I'm like, they, he, she, or no, exactly. So as I mentioned before, I use they, them pronouns pretty much exclusively. If you're using another pronoun for me, it's inaccurate. I'm just going to say that there's one person. Yeah, there's literally one person that I would understand a gendered pronoun from right now. Because, yeah, I'm not going to get into that. If you want to ask me and you care deep enough to be concerned with that, ask me privately. It's not a problem, but I just don't want to explain it here right now. It's not what I'm doing with the space. Yeah, there is definitely a difference. There is absolutely space, right? Like if that's been your experience and you've been reworking these things and you're like, today I'm really identifying with this, or for this period of time, I'm really working through questions that concern these concepts. And as I'm working through this, these pronouns really affirm my ability to move through this space. As I'm asking some of these questions, this pronoun is something I can really identify with to feel stable and solid and experience solidarity in myself and others. That's totally a different thing, right? So it's really about knowing your own experience. But, the Becky who just walks around campus and is like, I'm free, I'm fluid, I'm open, I'm blah, blah, blah. And, early me is like, wow, that's really great. I love how like free spirited this person is. But then I look at their politics and they're actually just like, what are you doing with it? It's fine for us to have all of our experiences, but you can ask questions about what work people are doing. And sometimes I don't see it. Sometimes I see that Becky is with Chad, John, Brian, and I'm assuming that these are associated with male perceived people. Also, sometimes I hear myself and I'm like, someone with less experience asking these questions, or just less familiarity, less exposure, it probably sounds absurd and totally just whatever, it's too much. But anyway, I see Becky at university, I see Becky at Starbucks, I see Becky when I go to queer spaces, I see Becky online in the vegan polyamory group, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting because I know that the work that we represent and the work that we're willing to do is different. It's extremely different between the two of us. So it is really tiresome, and that's a conversation that needs to be had. Anyway, I haven't even read this. I am going to read this one too. So 7, gender fluid or using they, them pronouns. I know it was weeks ago, but I'm still not over Gigi and Zane saying that they're gender fluid because they sometimes borrow each other's clothes. You just have to pause. And that's not even the worst of it. I recently met someone who identifies as straight and cisgender who only uses they them pronouns because that's their form of allyship. So, okay, so I'm just going to read this and I'll speak on it. I'm sorry, but no. People who are gender fluid have a hard enough time as it is. What with living in a binary world, from bathrooms to clothes, shopping to government IDs, their gender is constantly invalidated. You don't get to use a very real gender identity as a chance to show your level of wokeness. Just know. So, if people are doing basic stuff like this, obviously that's a check no. But also, I am strongly, let me make sure this is not, yeah. So, I am strongly, and some of you asked about this actually, this is part of why I'm doing this. I use they them pronouns for literally everyone that I refer to, except for one individual. And I understand that for a lot of people, so like in past experiences I've had with that, people are like, I don't even know, there's like so many levels. So some people are like, you should definitely ask everyone's pronouns. And then they'll like suggest as a secondary thing, or just use like something gender neutral until you know someone's pronouns. The thing is, if Becky approaches me and says, I'm just open, it doesn't matter, but you know, I prefer she, her, or something, and I look at that work, I don't know if it makes me a jerk. That's totally fine with me. Like, I'm not going to affirm that. I'm just not. What I'm going to affirm is a question of what that work was, what it means to this person. I'm going to ask questions. I'm not in the way of like they need to validate it to me, but the point is using gendered pronouns is a very political process, and it is a process with a ton of potential for violence that Becky will not have to play out necessarily, but which I do when I put lipstick on, like having people like think it's playful or a joke rather than just like this is something I identify with, or if my shorts are a little bit too high or my shoes, or I'm using certain types of language and people are like uncomfortable or whatever with themselves, then that's something I have to work with. You know, every time that Becky reaffirms, and I'm just going to use this as a generic, every time that Becky reaffirms this unanalyzed position, I have to do the work that comes from explaining that to people, because I'm the one that people are going to ask all these questions to. I'm the one that does have to change my idea if I want to be affirmed as a whole person in the ways that I resonate most deeply with, or if I want to have anything even slightly accurate to my current experience. That's work that I have to do, and I do not feel that I have consented to doing that work. And so I really, yeah, I'm not about it. But I also understand that a lot of people may interpret that as like, oh, you're policing others when they tell you their pronouns. I'm not. I want to know that it's engaged, and I feel like that's accountable. I'm tired of unaccountable things, and I think no one is hurt. Let me reclaim that. Some people can be hurt. I feel that we all benefit as a whole, even if there's individual hurt, from asking difficult questions about what it means to use gendered pronouns, especially without discretion, just to use that as a base and to put that on somebody's body. If someone sees my body, then they see me and they use he, him, it's a violence. That's a violence, and that's my labor. That's literally my hours of work. So unless someone is willing to put that in my PayPal account, if someone is willing to support my work by fundraising or by sending me donations, if somebody is going to pay me an extremely great salary for each hour of work that I do, and it's countless. If someone is not going to do the work of connecting with me physically in an intimate way, I don't just mean sexual there, I mean in a complex way. If someone's not going to teach me some skills in exchange for my labor, you see my point. It is an exchange of energies, and I'm tired. I'm very tired of people being able to move in and out of identifying with their privilege as they please, knowing that my historical body will be the one that it gets played out on. That's exhausting. It's exhausting, and I'm going to need to see reparations for that work and all the rest of the work that I do. So yeah, I'm not policing people. I'm asking questions, and I'm hoping to reclaim space that people are taking up by loosely identifying with things that they have not really deeply considered. And that is a personal choice I make. I don't know that that is the most ideal political choice given our current situation of how we're understanding all these issues. I don't know. I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying that that is my personal position, and it is rare that I speak on my personal position as the most important. But right now, my current experience is that I'm not looking to affirm gendered pronouns being used wildly or gendered ideologies being used wildly by people who understand that that work goes on my body, and so they never have to do it. I'm not looking for that. And I feel pretty solid, given my experience, that I will continue to do that until I see another position. But I also understand, like, there are ways in which people are using gendered pronouns to do incredible things. And if you notice what I mentioned, I also will infrequently identify with a gendered pronoun. Yeah, I guess it's a cost-benefit analysis, and in my analysis currently in my personal life, I am not at a place where I feel it's justified for others to use gendered pronouns without showing me the investment of work that it's doing in relationship to my oppression. So I feel pretty solid on that. I'm open to hearing others' thoughts. I'm open to reworking that understanding. That's just where I'm at currently. Oops, sorry. Yeah, that's where I'm at, and that's what I do. And I do suggest that everyone use they, them pronouns if they have not already assumed. If someone has not told you their pronouns, I do suggest that we use they, them. And I do also suggest personally, again, this is personal, it's not necessarily my political position, what I think is the most justified. I do suggest challenging people if you, I don't even want to get into that, honestly, because it's so nuanced first of all, and secondly, I could easily feel differently. And I would rather not do the violence to the incredible people using gendered pronouns who are doing amazing things to deconstruct how we understand these roles. So that's where I'm going to pause. If someone wants to ask questions about that, I welcome you too. But that's where I stand on that currently. What? And there's a GIF of Katy Perry saying, "I kissed a girl and I liked it." I guess that's who this article is for then. I guess that is who this article is for. Okay, number 8. Feel free to post questions again, argue with me. I literally am not going to be upset at all with people arguing. I want people to engage. So share your thoughts. You can share them privately. I have my phone here. I can look at private messages. I won't share your name. Number 8, girl crush. So hashtag Woman Crush Wednesday wasn't created by or for queer women, sadly. If it was, we would all be able to find each other so easily. When you use the term girl crush about a woman you think is beautiful or amazing, you're invalidating the fact that some women love, and this uses the F word. I have no problem with cursing, but I don't know if that's the reason why my videos are being removed. So until I know better about that situation, I'm going to pause on cursing. It says, and if other women, it's like you have to put a disclaimer out there that you don't actually have a crush on her, making this term loaded with homophobia. Yeah, and I bet if my experience were more femme passing, if I were more femme perceived, I bet I would endlessly have the experience of people being like, I have a crush on you, like, or hearing other people say that to other femmes, like, oh my gosh, you're the cutest, you're the most beautiful, like, I totally am in love with you. It's like, okay, but like, are you actually in love with me? Because I'm trying to be in love with you, like, in a legitimate and sincere and vulnerable and committed and honest, open way. Um, and I think pretty quickly I'd see people fall back and be like, no, like, I'm not like that. So yeah, this is one I think also that needs to go. I think I'm seeing that pattern here. These are not all terms that I've seen people using in these ways, but I think a general theme is if you're not identifying with the historical violence, if that phrase already feels overwhelming, stop using these words, is the point. If that feels overwhelming because you feel like you have so much to learn to use these words, you have so much to add, you'll know if you resonate with some of these words. And if they're confusing for you, it's because they're confusing politically. And if you are not sure the political purpose that you're using it for, then you are committing violence. You're always committing violence by using language. That's what, it's part of what language is. But if you're using it without knowing your intention or having accountability for your intention beyond it just being a nice, good hope, I guess. Yeah, if you're not being held accountable for that, you should probably stop using it. You should probably just stop. Use the language that describes your experience. Why don't you create something that really you identify with? Why are you so insistent on using something that has the potential to hurt others' bodies in such a literal way and such a, why don't you get more creative than that, I guess? I've had this conversation before and I can see the problem with this. Which part are you responding to in particular? I'll respond to that in a second. So it says, sexuality is fluid and not as strict as you straight people might think. It's okay to have a crush or random attraction to someone who isn't the opposite gender. Again, this is something that other queer, particularly LGBT spaces need to understand. The thing is, when I engage, I'm going to speak on what I know because that's what I've observed the most. If I go into a space where I know there will be white gay men, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because I know that they're not doing 98% of the time, they're not doing the work to deconstruct the politics of how they engage my body. Some of the people that I've most felt colonized by, that I felt most violated by, I don't feel violated often, like in my general experience, because of how I understand the politics of my body. But if I talk about people I've had nasty experiences with, like in the sense of like, I just felt leaving, I left feeling like reduced from the moment we started interacting. It's in spaces with people who identify as white gay men. That's the places that I felt the most reduced, the places I felt the most spoken over. And I do suspect that there is something particularly alluring about being so close to the standard privilege, this white man with money and they're traditionally abled or neurotypical and English speaking, all of these things. They have their citizenship documented. When we look at all of these like traditional privileged places, I think that the closer people get to that, sometimes the more violence that they're willing to participate to join the group. And I see that with people who identify as white women, and I see that in particular with people I see who identify as white gay men. I also see that with Black men in particular. Not as much. Also, girlfriend. Oh yeah, yeah. No, like I've seen it a ton, and I know that I would see it more if others identify my experience differently. Um, Hold on. So I'm going to pause this one. I'm going to just go ahead and finish this one. I'm going to start another one immediately. Okay. So it's just going to be part 2 because I want to make sure that this gets uploaded. I don't want it to disappear like it has been. So I'm going to go ahead and stop, but I'm going to start another one. Okay. All right. I'll see you all there in just a second.